1971, a year when the world was on fire, and so was the radio. Marvin Gaye asked what was going on. Isaac Hayes was Shaft. The Temptations were running away with your imagination. But here's what nobody talks about. While those legends were taking their bows, 10 other artists stepped up to the microphone, poured everything they had into 3 minutes of pure soul, climbed all the way to the top of the charts, and then vanished. No follow-up, no comeback tour, no greatest hits album. Just one song, one moment, one chance at forever. And most people have never heard a single note. That changes today. This is R&B Rhythm. And these are the 10 most forgotten one-hit wonders of 1971 that you absolutely need to hear before another day goes by. Stay with us, because the story behind number 1 is something that will genuinely stop you in your tracks.
Pretend to be your friend.
Number 10. I've found someone of my own, the Free Movement.
Sat down by
We start our countdown at number 10, and we're already deep in the deep end. Let that sink in for a second. The 10th most forgotten one-hit wonder of 1971 peaked at number 5 on the entire Billboard Hot 100. Number 5. In any other era, a number 5 hit makes you a star for life. You get a label deal, a world tour, a VH1 special. Your face ends up on a wall somewhere. But 1971 had other plans for the Free Movement. This Los Angeles soul ensemble built something genuinely beautiful here. Multi-part harmonies stacked like architecture. A strings arrangement that sounds like it costs more than the studio they recorded it in. And at the center of it all, a vocal performance that aches with the kind of sincerity you simply cannot fake. The song is about falling in love and feeling like you finally belong to something bigger than yourself. And when those voices lock together on the chorus, you feel it. You actually feel it. The Free Movement released one album. One. And then the group dissolved, each member disappearing back into the city that made them. The label didn't push them. Radio programmers moved on. And one of the most effortlessly soulful vocal groups of their generation became a footnote. But that song still breathes.
I found someone of my own.
If number 10 already has you feeling something, just wait, because the story only gets stranger from here. Number 9. Trapped by a Thing Called Love, Denise LaSalle.
What is this man that he makes me?
Number 9 on our countdown, and we need to talk about what happened to Denise LaSalle. Because by every measure that should matter, this woman was not a one-hit wonder. She was a songwriter, a producer, a businesswoman who co-owned the label that released this record. She had the talent of Aretha Franklin and the hustle of Berry Gordy, wrapped inside one unstoppable human being from Belzoni, Mississippi. And then she released this song. That groove. You hear that? That locked in, low down, no apologies groove. That's a woman who knew exactly what she was doing every single second in that recording booth. The song hit number 1 on the R&B chart, number 1. It crossed over to number 13 on the Hot 100. Radio stations couldn't stop playing it. Crowds went absolutely wild when it came on. And then the crossover door slammed shut.
If he doesn't call again.
LaSalle kept recording, kept releasing music, kept tearing up stages across the South for the next 5 decades. She became a queen of the blues circuit, celebrated and beloved, but that mainstream moment, that one shot at the broadest possible audience, never came back. She passed away in 2022, and even then, most obituaries called her a one-hit wonder, as if a lifetime of music could be reduced to what a chart once decided to acknowledge.
Oh, baby.
Number 9 on our countdown, and honestly, one of the most deserving artists we'll mention today. We're moving forward, and things are only going to get more interesting.
Ooh, baby.
Before we continue, Most people watching R&B Rhythm right now aren't subscribed. And if you love these stories, the real history behind the music, this channel only works if people like you support it. So take 2 seconds. Hit subscribe if R&B history means something to you. Because every episode takes hours of research, archive digging, and fact-checking. And this music deserves to have its story told right. All right, back to the countdown. Number 8, She's All I Got, Freddie North.
Please don't take her love away from me.
You want to know something unfair? Some songs get to number 1 and nobody remembers them. And some songs climb all the way to the edge of the top 40 and become more meaningful than almost anything that passed them on the way up. Number 8 on our countdown is one of those songs.
She is everything to me in life.
Freddie North was a Nashville-based soul singer with a voice that could have filled stadiums. Deep, warm, and unguarded in a way that most artists spend their entire careers trying to manufacture. And in 1971, he recorded She's All I Got, a slow, devastating declaration of love that hit number 6 on the R&B chart and barely kissed the pop top 40 before sliding away.
Away from me. I'm begging you.
Hear that? That restraint, that patience, that willingness to let silence do the work that most singers try to fill with runs and acrobatics. Freddie North understood that the most powerful thing a vocalist can do is mean every single word. Here's the twist. She's All I Got was such a strong song that it was covered twice by country star Johnny Paycheck in the same year, and again in 1997 by Tracy Byrd. Both versions charted on the country charts. 2 other artists had hits with his song. And Freddie North himself faded into obscurity. The music industry has always had a talent for that kind of irony. 8 entries in. We're just getting started. Number 7 is about to introduce you to a group with one of the most psychedelic, unexpected sounds to ever come out of Motown's orbit. Number 7. Smiling Faces Sometimes, The Undisputed Truth. Number 7. And we need to pause here for a moment because this entry is genuinely eerie. The Undisputed Truth were assembled by Motown legend Norman Whitfield, the same man behind some of the Temptations' most haunting psychedelic soul records. Whitfield wanted a vehicle for his more experimental ideas. Something darker, stranger, less concerned with being comfortable. And in 1971, he gave them Smiling Faces Sometimes. This is not a happy song. Underneath that churning, swirling groove is one of the most paranoid lyrics ever recorded in popular music. A warning that the people smiling at you might be the ones who want to bring you down. That trust is the most dangerous thing you can offer another human being. In 1971, when the civil rights movement was still raw, when Vietnam was tearing communities apart, when the optimism of the 1960s had curdled into something harder and more complicated, this record hit number 3 on the entire Hot 100. People didn't just like it, they felt it in their chest. But the group never made the pop top 40 again. They continued recording through the mid-70s with more R&B success, but that one stunning brush with the mainstream was all they ever got. The song has been sampled countless times. Movies and TV shows still license it. The message has never aged a single day. 6 entries left. And we haven't even gotten to the songs that most people have never heard a single second of that changes starting right now. Number 6. One Bad Apple, The Osmonds. Wait, here's the twist. Okay, before you close out of this video, stay with me for exactly 30 seconds. Because number 6 is a lesson about what 1971 actually sounded like, and about how the music industry worked when one song could lock an entire lane shut. The soul sound in 1971 was so dominant, so magnetic, so deeply embedded in American radio that pop acts were literally designed to sound like R&B groups in order to succeed. Case in point, One Bad Apple by the Osmonds. Produced deliberately in the style of the Jackson 5, complete with a punchy young lead vocalist, tight call and response harmonies, and a groove that owed everything to black soul music. One Bad Apple went to number 1 in February of 1971 and stayed there for 5 straight weeks. But here's what makes this entry fascinating rather than infuriating. The Osmonds went on to have dozens more hits. They weren't a one-hit wonder at all. The one-hit wonder in this story is the sound itself, the soul sound. The groove, the approach that made One Bad Apple work, was borrowed wholesale from artists who never got the 5 weeks at number 1.
Boy, oh my goodness. His name is Rio Gardner.
1971 rewarded a lot of talent. It also rewarded a lot of imitation, and the line between the two is sometimes heartbreakingly thin. We're going deeper now. Number 5 is one of the most gorgeous recordings of the entire decade. Number 5, Want Ads, Honeycomb. And here is where the injustice of this countdown starts to get truly hard to explain. Honeycomb were not an overnight act. They were 3 experienced session singers, Edna Wright, Carolyn Willis, and Shelley Clark, who had paid their dues as backup vocalists for some of the biggest names in the business. These were professionals, polished, fearless, and overdue. In the spring of 1971, they released Want Ads. That opening, that groove, that instantly iconic line about looking for a new love in the classified section of a newspaper, sharp, witty, completely self-assured, it took the song straight to number 1 on the pop chart and the R&B chart simultaneously. It was one of the biggest songs of the year. And then the follow-up single stalled. The momentum slipped. The group recorded and released more music, but lightning had already struck and the bottle was already moving on. Want Ads remains one of the great forgotten number 1 hits of the early 70s. The kind of song that, the moment you hear it, makes you wonder why it isn't playing somewhere every single day. 4 entries left. We are in the heart of the countdown now. And number 4 is about an artist whose voice the whole world borrowed without ever learning her name. Number 4, Mr. Big Stuff, Jean Knight.
Mr. Big Stuff.
Do you know this song? Even if you don't recognize the name Jean Knight, even if you've never seen her face or read her biography, you know this song. You have heard it in a movie, in a commercial, in the background of a scene in some television show that was trying to tell you exactly what year it was set in. You have heard this groove looped and sampled and reworked and passed through so many other artists' hands that it has become part of the invisible fabric of American popular culture.
Who do you think you are, Mr.
And Jean Knight, the woman who sang it, peaked at number 2 in 1971 and then watched the industry move on without her.
I know you broke their hearts one after another. Now,
Listen to that voice. That is not a polished studio confection. That is a woman from New Orleans with something to say, saying it with every ounce of conviction she has. The song is a put down, a refusal, a declaration that no amount of money, status, or swagger makes a man worth her time if he can't treat her right. In 1971, and really, in any year you care to name, that message landed like a thunderclap. Mr. Big Stuff sold over 1 million copies. It defined a sound. It launched 1,000 samples. And Jean Knight spent the next several decades performing on regional circuits, largely unknown to the mainstream that had once put her at number 2 on the charts. 3 entries left, and we are now entering the territory of songs that are so good, so genuinely, undeniably great, that their disappearance from the cultural conversation feels almost deliberate. Number 3 is going to hit you somewhere deep. Number 3, Thin Line Between Love and Hate, The Persuaders. Close your eyes for a second. Not literally, but stay with me here. Imagine you're in a room in 1971. It's late. The record player is going, and somebody drops a needle on a single that starts so quietly you almost lean in to hear it, and then builds, slowly, patiently, irresistibly, into one of the most cautionary and devastating soul performances ever committed to vinyl. That record is Thin Line Between Love and Hate by The Persuaders. The story the song tells is operatic in its simplicity. A man has been mistreating a woman for months, for years. She has been patient, forgiving, silent. And then one day, one ordinary, unremarkable day, she decides she is done being patient. The payoff is delivered so calmly, so deliberately, that it is somehow more chilling than any scream could ever be. The song went to number 1 on the R&B chart. It peaked at 15 on the Hot 100. It should have made The Persuaders into legends. Instead, it was covered by artists from Dells to Annie Lennox to H-Town, and became more famous in other people's mouths than it ever was in the voices that created it. The original is still the best version ever recorded, and most people have never heard it. 2 entries left. Number 2 will surprise you with who it is. And number one is the story that will stay with you long after this video is over. Don't go anywhere. Number 2, Clean Up Woman, Betty Wright. And here is something that will genuinely rearrange your understanding of music history. Betty Wright was 17 years old when she recorded Clean Up Woman. 17. She had already been performing since she was a child, touring with gospel groups, cutting her teeth on stages that would have intimidated adults twice her age. By the time she walked into TK Records in Miami to record this song, she was a teenager with the instincts of a veteran and the voice of someone who had already lived several lifetimes. That guitar riff. You know that riff. Everybody knows that riff. It has been sampled more times than almost any other piece of music from this entire era. Mary J. Blige built a career on sounds that trace back directly to what Betty Wright was doing at 17 years old in a Miami studio in 1971. Clean Up Woman is about a rival. About the woman who swoops in when you're not paying enough attention to the person you love. The metaphor is domestic, specific, and absolutely devastating. And Wright delivers it with the kind of knowing authority that makes you forget she was barely old enough to drive. The song peaked at number 6 nationally. Number 2 R and B. Betty Wright kept recording and did find more success later in her career. But this moment, this song, this riff, this is the version of Betty Wright that the world heard, and then somehow failed to fully hold on to. She passed away in 2020. And the samples of her music outlived her in ways that should have come with credit, royalties, and recognition a long time ago. 1 entry left, number 1. And if you've been patient enough to make it this far, thank you. Because what we're about to tell you is the kind of story that makes you fall in love with music all over again and feel the loss of what might have been all at the same time. Number 1, The Fuzz. The Fuzz. Number 1 on our countdown of the 10 most forgotten one-hit wonders of 1971. And I need to set the scene before a single note plays. It is early 1971. You are standing outside a record store, one of those narrow places with bins so full you have to sort through them sideways. The windows are plastered with promo photos. The speakers out front are sending music onto the sidewalk. And coming out of those speakers is something that doesn't sound like it belongs to 1971 at all. It sounds like Philadelphia, like orchestral soul not yet fully invented. Like the future arriving several years early, wrapped in string arrangements and harmonies that feel effortless and eternal in the same breath. That sound is coming from 3 teenage girls from Washington, D.C. Sheila Young, Barbara Gilliam, Val Williams. They formed the Fuzz as teenagers. They recorded their debut album at the legendary Sigma Sound Studios in Philadelphia, the same rooms where TSOP would be born, where the sound of Philadelphia would crystallize into one of the most influential musical movements in American history, the lush strings. The harmonies that hang in the air like they don't want to leave. The voice at the center of it, warm and searching and completely unafraid. I Love You for All Seasons climbed to number 21 on the Hot 100, and then nothing. The group never charted again. The album barely registered outside of the cities where soul radio had deep roots. 3 teenage girls from D.C. had walked into one of the great recording studios of the era, made something genuinely beautiful, watched it almost reach the top of the charts, and then watched the moment close behind them like a door. What happened? The honest answer is, the industry happened. Young black female acts in 1971 existed in a market that was constantly looking for the next big thing, and just as constantly discarding the current thing in favor of it. Without sustained label support, without a machine behind them, a number 21 hit was a ceiling rather than a launching pad. But here is what has never changed. The song still sounds the way it did the first time someone heard it come out of those sidewalk speakers. Effortless. Eternal. Completely unlike anything else on the radio before or since. 3 young women from Washington, D.C. made one of the most beautiful records of 1971. The world heard it, moved on, and forgot them. We just remembered.